This video is about ultraviolet tubes that are available readily from eBay, and it was inspired by an event that happened in Hong Kong recently, an undesirable ultraviolet event, and it made me realise that there are germicidal ultraviolet tubes which are not good for you, being sold just as they're calling them ultraviolet, black light. They're just using the same terminology in these tubes as they are in these effects tubes, and it's just not the case, and it's to make you aware that these ones are quite dangerous. So let's start with a nice safe. I say safe. No ultraviolet is truly safe, but the one that's considered the safest is UVA. UVA is in the wavelength range of about 315 to 400 nanometers, and it's just off the blue end of the spectrum. It's just going into the area that you can't see the light brightly. Some people can see down into part of the ultraviolet spectrum, but most of us don't see it. So what we've got here are two UVA lamps, and this one is called black light blue, and this one is rather deceptively called black light, despite the fact it's not really what I'd call black light. I used to mix these up because I used to think this was true black light because the tube looks very black when it's off. And this was the black light blue because it lights up bright blue. But in reality, they're talking about the colour of the glass. And when it's off, it does have that really dark bluish tint to it. So that this is the black light blue, and that's kind of endorsed here. T5 8 watt black light blue, BLB. I should also mention T5 means 5/8. Let's try that again. 5/8 of an inch in diameter, so it's just over half an inch in diameter. The classic effect for this is, of course, fluorescent day glow type effect. So let me find something that's fluorescent here. Overalls, that's fluorescent. Industrial workwear. So if I turn this off, you'll see it absolutely obliterates the place with it, makes it glow quite brightly. It's actually looking a lot bright in the camera because of the area that I'm metering it from, but it's making the overalls look weird because it's making the material glow, but where there's dirt it makes it look as though it's glowing from underneath. It's a very odd effect. I should also mention dirty overalls. If you have a job that is grubby and unpleasant, there's much less competition for that job, and therefore more work for you. There's a lot to be said for the less desirable jobs. You find that if there's a job that's considered fun and desirable, there's a lot more competition for it. So I say go for the dirty, unpleasant jobs because there's less competition, and health and safety are less likely to give you harassment on the site because they don't like getting their hands dirty. Oh, that went in a random anti-HSE tangent. Not to worry, continuing on. What's an interesting thing is that this tube here, let me put this in. Let me plug this tube in and I'll show you the difference. It lights up brightly as a sort of blue. I mean, it's not maybe showing so well on the camera. Hold on, let me turn the light off again. Bright blue. And once again, if I bring in the high vis here, it excites the ultraviolet well, I say the ultraviolet pigments, it makes the material fluoresce. In reality, even ordinary blue light will make high vis fabrics fluoresce, which is unfortunate because while wearing those very items in Glasgow, one of the main streets in Glasgow, the shopping street, Buchanan Street, is lit blue with blue metal halides, and honestly, it's so embarrassing. If you're wearing high vis and you walk down it, it makes you look like a Belisha beacon. It's embarrassing. You have to sort of take a route that gets minimum contact of the blue light so you don't glow like some sort of weird psychedelic Disney character. So this tube here has the same phosphors as this one, but the difference is that this has the Woods glass coating. I say Woods glass coating. The glass is most likely based on nickel, which creates a dark glass that filters out visible light but lets the desired wavelengths of ultraviolet through. And all these tubes, they've got, they're actually inside, they've got a carrier gas, usually argon or krypton, and mercury vapour, just a tiny, tiny quantity of mercury vapour, it's all that's needed. And the mercury emits certain wavelengths of ultraviolet. In this case, the glass is clear because they're using a specific wavelength that's designed to pass that wavelength. On these other ones, it blocks the ultraviolet completely, the harmful ultraviolet, but the phosphor inside converts it to a different wavelength that is safer, the UVA. And that's then further filtered by the black glass for where you want it to be very dark and you want just the ultraviolet effects. This is also the wavelength that attracts insects, and this is actually an insecticutor tube. They've got lots of uses. This one is just for visual effects. This will also attract insects that can see that wavelength of light. This one is just designed, it's kind of strange that this one is probably more expensive to make because of the specialist glass, but really it is just this tube with the darker glass. And you do get some insect killers that have the dark tube, and I think the reason that they use the clear glass tube that lights up quite blue for some insect killers is for two reasons. One, that you can see it's working, and B, it's cheaper. And yet these tubes are actually more expensive than these ones. There is another wavelength of tube that looks very much like this, and it's UVB, but you don't actually often get dedicated UVB only tubes. It's usually a mixture of UVA with a small quantity of UVB added in, and they're used as sun lamps, and they're for sun tanning, and they're also used for reptile tanks, the vivariums, is that the correct terminology for that? Because they put out a sort of more natural sunlight spectrum. It's also worth mentioning that UVA is not really inhibited much by the atmosphere, so of all the ultraviolet that comes from the sun, UVA is the most common. And it causes, you can get a tan off these tubes. In fact, Philips makes what they call a facial solarium, which is just a group of these tubes, and you're supposed to shove your face in it and it tans your face, which is all kind of pointless, really. But UVA has the fastest tanning effect. It gives an instant tanning effect, but that's only because it's stimulating the pigments in your skin that are created to protect you from the sun by darkening the skin. UVB, on the other hand, which is used for the tanning lamps and also for treatment of skin conditions, it actually creates is it melatonin? I can't actually remember. What is that pigment that makes your skin darker? Well, the UVA has that effect. It changes it very fast. The UVB causes its production, so they each have their own effect. And that's why tanning lamps use both, one for instant effect and one for a slightly longer term effect. Let me think. So UVB is partially absorbed by the atmosphere. A much lower percentage of UVB gets down to the earth from the sun. It's also worth mentioning at this moment regarding tanning that people who work outdoors in the sun all the time, and if you think I'm going to go on about skin cancer now and things like that, in reality, people who are exposed to sun all the time have a much lower incidence of skin cancer, and it's less threatening when they get it, and they are also much physically healthier, probably because they're working outdoors and that's a physical job, but also because the ultraviolet is needed to convert the vitamin D in your body. That's why people sometimes get sort of health problems in the winter because of the lack of sun exposure. Seasonal affective disorder, that's what it's called. The rather inappropriately sad disorder. So that's UVA and UVB. Right, let's go on to UVC now. And this is a tube. I'm going to put it in, but I'm not going to leave it in for very long. And I'm going to explain that why. I'm going to put it in now. And when I put it in, you'll see it light up. And all you'll see is the glow of the mercury inside. This is what it looks like. It looks rather ghostly. Nice visual effect, which is unfortunate because that's what somebody chose it for. Now, you do get neon tubes that look like this. I can smell this already. You do get neon tubes that look like this, and as long as they're made of ordinary glass, they're not harmful. This one is made of a special glass that is designed to pass UVC, which is in the region of 100 to 280 nanometers. UVB, on the other hand, is 280 to 315 nanometers. And if I place my hand near this tube now, and then I sniff my hand, I'm smelling a mixture of burnt pork, it smells like charred skin, and ozone. And I'm going to turn this off now, because I'm not going to expose myself to it too much for obvious reasons. Let's get it out the right way. You see, UVC is used as a germicidal lamp, and the UVC is normally completely filtered out before it reaches the earth. I'll put in the nice ultraviolet lamp. I'll put in my preferred ultraviolet lamp here. So UVC is normally completely filtered out by the atmosphere. It's such a short wavelength that it gets stopped by oxygen or, well, anything really will absorb it. And in fact, even when it hits the skin, although it can cause damage, it doesn't penetrate deeply. And in that sense, it's considered that UVB and UVA are actually more harmful because they can penetrate deeper. But what UVC can do is it can split DNA. And it causes what's called, what's it called again? The eye thing, keratosis. If you're exposed to UVC, it's not only giving you sunburn effectively, directly, because it's a wavelength that's not normally experienced down on the Earth. But if your eyes get exposed to it, it has the same effect as UV from arc welders, and it causes the keratosis, which basically damages the surface of your eye. And the end result of this is that if you are exposed, if you looked at this tube for a modest length of time, later on, you would possibly experience a sensation like having sand in your eye. It would be like you'd got some grit in your eye and you couldn't get it out. And the only cure for that really is, hopefully not too long an exposure you've had, is just to let your eyes recover themselves. And that can take a couple of days, but it's really unpleasant in that time. They can put anaesthetics into your eyes, but that can actually affect them. That can actually prevent the healing process taking place. And UVC is normally used for germicidal purposes. You'll often see these inside machines where baking is done or something like that, so that at night the machine will go through a sterilising cycle, or even during the day, and it will basically turn on these tubes inside, and then all the conveyors inside will run past the light and it will sterilise it. It can sterilise air. You get these tubes used in, well, some tumble dryers have small ultraviolet tubes, and some heating systems of the ultraviolet tubes that are used to sterilise the air as it goes through. And actually it creates ozone by splitting oxygen molecules apart too and letting them form in triple clusters of oxygen atoms. The other thing it's used for is water treatment, where you've basically got a sleeve and the water's passed through the sleeve and it gets exposed to the ultraviolet light as it passes through, as it's being pumped round. That's used in pools and water treatment plants for sterilising. It basically kills anything in the water. Now, the event that happened was a fashion event in Japan called Hype Beast. And unfortunately, someone thought that it would be a really good idea to get these colourful tubes. Now, I want to say that you can get colourful tubes. You can get coloured fluorescent tubes of colours like pink and green and blue. But they're much hard to get these days because LED is pretty much taken over in that area. You also get the sleeves, the encapsulate sleeves that you slide over the tubes, and it not only protects them, but you can actually get coloured sleeves, or you can get theatre gel and you can actually wrap it round the tubes, quite footery. But you can wrap it around the tubes and tape it, and it will give the effect of a coloured tube by subtractive colouring. But this event was based on a sort of futuristic fashion brand. It was a party they through that had this sort of futuristic sort of mannequin in the middle, DJ playing music, and they used a selection of coloured tubes that they got. And they obviously didn't realise the hazards of this, because one of the tubes they chose was a germicidal tube. And a lot of the people who went to this event then reported experiencing sunburn. And this is something I didn't know. I thought that black people are fairly immune to sunburn because, well, their skin contains pigment. They're designed for living in dark, in bright, sunshiny environments. But this stuff actually caused sunburn and the skin peeling effect on black pigmented skin, which is quite surprising. It shows how destructive it is. And these people also had the eye problems. And one of them, when he woke in the middle of the night, he had that sand in the eye effect and sought medical attention. And the following day he went back to the event, which was still running. He went in and took pictures of the tubes because he was told that, it might have been caused by ultraviolet exposure. And that is probably bad news for the presenters of the event, because the picture they showed was evidence that these tubes had been in use, which is just it's a mistake that's easy to make ultimately if you don't know any better. I mean, this just looks a really visual tube with its ghostly blue glow, but you just do not want to expose your skin or eyes to it. Now, I want to mention that I wear glasses. I wear ultraviolet active reactive glass as well. But the glass in them blocks all UVC. So I wasn't concerned about looking at that tube there as long as I'm wearing glasses. If I take my glasses off, there is an effect that even that short exposure would have had an effect. As it is, you know, I had that on for a modest length of time there. I don't think it would harm anything, but it may cause slight skin irritation or discoloration. Who knows? I'll find out later on. The skin still smells damaged. So it's interesting to note too that when I say that UVA reaches the ground in large quantities from the sun and UVB less so, and then virtually no UVC gets through, that is filtered out by the atmosphere. And you hear about this, the ozone layer. In reality, the ozone layer is caused by oxygen in the atmosphere being hit by the UVC. That's what converts it to ozone. It's not the ozone that's stopping the ultraviolet getting down. It's the ozone as a byproduct of the prevention of the ozone from actually coming down to the ground, to the earth. And I'm trying to think what else I can really say about this now. The main hazard to us on the ground is because UVC is not what you call naturally occurring. You have to generate it in arcs or with these tubes, and that's where we're just not designed to handle that at all. Our skin isn't designed to withstand that. I'm trying to think, that's more or less it. I will provide a link to the article that the picture came from. It's an article in Hong Kong Free Press that basically gives the story of what happened. And the purpose of this video is to say that ultraviolet, you can buy these tubes online, but note there's a couple of different types of blacklight tube, and just unless you're actually using this in a fully enclosed environment that nobody can get exposed to it or see it, then this is just one tube you do not want to buy. It's not suitable for use as a visual effect. It's only intended for use in germicidal applications.